Welcome to Tales of the Tender West, where every sunset tells a love story. Saddle up, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales of the frontier. The sun hung low over the vast expanse of the Cowboys' ranch, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and crimson. Dust swirled across the dry fields, stirred by the hooves of restless horses. It had been a long, hard season, and the cowboy, a rugged man with weathered skin and tired eyes, felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. The ranch had been in his family for generations, but lately, trouble had been creeping. Who preyed on isolated homesteads had been spotted near the outskirts of his land. He rode along the fence line, inspecting the property, muttering to himself about repairs and fences that needed fixing. The cattle were restless, sensing the tension in the air. As he adjusted his hat and squinted at the horizon, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Figure moving swiftly and confidently across the distant hills. Curiosity pricked at him, and he nudged his horse forward. As the figure came closer, he realized it was a young Apache girl, no older than 20. With hair the color of midnight and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of generations, she rode a small, sturdy horse, and there was a grace in the way she navigated the terrain that suggested she was no stranger to these lands. The cowboy slowed, unsure whether to call out or remain silent. The girl's gaze met his, steady and unwavering, and for a moment, he felt a strange sense of calm, though her presence alone had a grounding effect. Then, without a word, she rode past him toward the distant barn. Curiosity turned into alarm when he noticed smoke curling into the sky. His heart pounded as he spurred his horse toward the barn, fearing the worst. As he neared, the sound of shouts and the clatter of hooves reached him. They had come under the cover of dusk, hoping to take advantage of the ranch's isolation. The cowboy drew his revolver, his hands steady despite the surge of adrenaline. But he was outnumbered, outgunned, and unprepared. And then she appeared. The Apache girl moved like a shadow, striking with precision and speed. She disarmed one of the men before he could even raise his weapon, ducked under a swing, and launched herself into the fray with courage that made the cowboy's jaw drop. Her movements were fluid, instinctive years of training and experience etched into every motion. He fought alongside her, but it became clear quickly that it was her strategy and skill that turned the tide. She corralled the horses, blocked escape routes, and used the terrain to her advantage. One by one, the bandits realized they were outmatched, surrendering or fleeing into the darkness. When the dust finally settled, the ranch stood intact, and the cattle were safe. The cowboy lowered his revolver, breathing hard, his chest pounding with gratitude and disbelief. The girl dismounted, brushing dust from her clothes, her expression calm and composed, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. Who are you?" he asked, still catching his breath. She looked at him, her dark eyes steady. "Someone who believes in doing what's right," she said simply, her voice quiet but firm. The cowboy stared at her, a mixture of awe and humility washing over him. In that moment, he realized that no amount of gold, no amount of reward, could ever repay what she had done. She had risked her life for his ranch, for him a stranger, and for the livestock that meant everything to his livelihood. "By all that's holy, you saved my ranch," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I owe you more than gold, more than anything I could ever offer." She merely nodded, as if understanding, and gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. There was no expectation of reward, no request for thanks, only the quiet strength of a person who had chosen to act when it mattered most. As the sun sank behind the hills and the first stars began to shimmer in the dusky sky, the cowboy felt something shift within him. This encounter, brief and sudden, had already changed his life. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope, a spark that perhaps, with this brave Apache girl by his side, the ranch, and maybe even his life, could survive the trials yet to come. And deep down, he knew that this was only the beginning. The night settled over the ranch, leaving a hush that felt almost sacred. The campfire flickered in the yard, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. The cowboy sat on the old wooden fence, still absorbing the reality of what had happened. His heart was calm now, but his mind refused to stop racing. He kept glancing at the Apache girl, who had tied her horse nearby and was crouched by the fire, quietly inspecting a set of tools she had pulled from her saddlebag. "Why did you help me?" he finally asked, his voice breaking the silence. She didn't look up immediately. Her hands worked with practiced efficiency, tightening a leather strap and arranging her gear. When she finally met his gaze, her eyes were steady and unflinching. "Because it was the right thing to do," she said softly. "You didn't ask for help, and yet your ranch needed protecting, and you were alone." The cowboy shifted on the fence, unsure of what to say. Her words struck him harder than any bullet could have. He had spent years building this life, trying to keep everything together on his own. And yet, in one swift night, a stranger had reminded him how fragile that solitude was. "Most folks," he muttered, "wouldn't have done what you did. They'd have taken what they wanted and rode off." She shrugged, the motion casual but deliberate. "I've learned not to judge people by what they appear to be. You protect your land, your cattle, your life, just as I protect mine." Sometimes, paths cross for a reason. Maybe tonight, ours did. Her words stirred something deep within him. He realized that her courage wasn't just in fighting off bandits, it was in every choice she had made in her life. Every danger she had faced alone, every challenge in the wilderness, had shaped her into someone who didn't hesitate when the stakes were high. He felt a mixture of awe and humility, realizing that he had much to learn from her. Curiosity overcame him. "Who are you?" he asked, carefully this time. "Where do you come from?" The girl hesitated, as though weighing how much to reveal. Then she said, "I'm from the Apache tribe. My people taught me how to survive, how to read the land, how to move silently and strike only when necessary. My father, he always said that courage isn't measured by how loudly you fight, but by how quietly you stand for what's right." The cowboy nodded slowly. He could see that her skills and instincts were more than just luck. They were the product of a life lived with discipline, observation, and respect for the land. He felt a pang of regret that he had never taken the time to learn such lessons himself. "Seems you've been well taught," he said quietly. She allowed herself a small smile, the first real one he had seen. "And you seem to have a good heart, though it's hidden under years of worry and hard work." He laughed softly, almost embarrassed. "I suppose that's true. Life out here doesn't leave much room for softness. You learn to fend for yourself, or you don't last long." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the firelight made them glow like dark amber. Even the strongest fends better with someone watching their back. The cowboy's chest tightened at her words. He felt the weight of gratitude pressing down on him again, but this time it was mixed with something more, a realization that he wanted to trust her, to learn from her, to let her be a part of his world, even if only for a while. The night deepened, and the wind carried the scent of sage and dry earth. The cowboy and the Apache girl sat in companionable silence, each lost in thought. He wondered about the dangers still lurking on the horizon. The bandits might return, and there were other threats he could not yet see. But for the first time in years, he felt ready to face them, not alone, but with someone he could rely on. "Tomorrow," he said finally, his voice firm with resolve, "we'll start fixing the fences and securing the ranch. But tonight, you rest. You've earned it." She nodded once, quietly acknowledging his words. But her eyes held a spark of challenge and unspoken promise that this was only the beginning of their journey. And as the fire crackled and the stars glittered overhead, the cowboy realized that life on the ranch, once a lonely and dangerous existence, was about to change forever. The girl who had saved him was more than a stranger now. She was a force that had opened a door to a future he had never dared imagine, a future where courage, loyalty, and perhaps something deeper would shape the days to come. The morning sun broke over the horizon, spilling golden light across the ranch and casting long shadows of the cattle grazing in the fields. The cowboy had been awake for hours, checking the fences, counting the stock, and repairing gates that the bandits might have tampered with during their attack. But despite his careful inspection, he couldn't shake the lingering unease that gnawed at him. The Apache girl was already up, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone used to wilderness survival. She checked the perimeter, noting weak points in the fences and marking areas where bandits could easily hide. Her presence was a calm, steadying force, and the cowboy found himself following her lead, learning to see the land through her eyes. "Bandits rarely strike only once," she said, her voice low and deliberate. "If they return, they'll come smarter, more prepared. We need to plan, or this ranch won't be safe." The cowboy nodded, swallowing the lump of worry in his throat. He had fought off bandits before, but never like this, never with someone whose skills rivaled his own, and whose calm logic made him feel both relieved and slightly humbled. "What do you suggest?" he asked. She walked him along the fence line, pointing out choke points where they could trap intruders, and areas where the terrain could be used to their advantage. "We can fortify the barn, keep the livestock secure, set up warning systems, bells, tripwires, and lookouts. And if they come, we strike as one, fast and precise." The cowboy listened carefully, impressed. Her strategies weren't just clever, they were rooted in years of experience surviving in a harsh, unforgiving environment. He realized that if he followed her advice, the ranch wouldn't just survive, it could become nearly impenetrable. As they worked together, a bond began to form, solidifying with every plan made and fence repaired. They shared stories between tasks. The cowboy, speaking of his childhood on the ranch, his parents' teachings, and the pride he felt in carrying on their legacy. She, in turn, shared tales of her tribe, the lessons her father and elders had taught her, and the countless times she had defended her people from dangers, both natural and human. By midday, the ranch was in better shape than it had been for months, and for the first time in a long time, the cowboy felt a flicker of hope. But that hope was short. A rider appeared on the horizon, kicking up dust as he approached at a fast pace. The cowboy squinted, heart sinking as he recognized the emblem on the rider's vest. The bandits were scouting the ranch, testing defenses, looking for weaknesses. "They're back," he muttered, gripping the reins tightly. The Apache girl's eyes narrowed, her stance instantly shifting into readiness. "Good," she said. "We'll know what we're up against, and we'll be ready when they strike." They think they've seen our weakness. They haven't seen anything yet. The rider drew closer and called out, his voice loud and mocking. We'll be back tonight. Cowboy, you can't hold this place forever. The cowboy felt anger flare within him, but he quickly tempered it. Remembering her earlier words about precision and planning, he nodded to the Apache girl. Let's get the defenses ready, he said, determination hardening in his chest. As the day wore on, they worked tirelessly. Fences were reinforced with hidden spikes and barriers. Tripwires were strung along likely paths of approach, and the barn was barricaded with heavy timbers. The cowboy even learned to trust her instincts, letting her make key decisions about where to position lookouts and traps. He was amazed at how naturally she led, guiding him with confidence and quiet authority. When evening fell, they sat atop a ridge overlooking the ranch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of crimson and gold. The Apache girl's horse grazed nearby, and the cowboy felt a strange sense of peace amidst the tension. You've changed how I see this ranch, he admitted quietly. I was so focused on surviving on my own. I didn't realize how much strength there was in planning and watching each other's backs. I owe you more than I can ever say. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. You don't owe me anything, she said, but you do need to remember strength isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing your land, knowing your enemy, and trusting those who stand with you. He nodded, feeling the truth in her words. For the first time, he understood that the ranch and perhaps even his life depended on more than his own skill. It depended on courage, wisdom, and trust. And as the shadows grew long and the first stars appeared, both knew the night ahead would test them more than any day had yet, but together, they would be ready. Night fell over the ranch like a velvet curtain, bringing with it the cool air of autumn and the eerie stillness that only comes before a storm. The cowboy and the Apache girl crouched near the barn, listening intently. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying the faintest hint of movement. Somewhere beyond the fence, shadows shifted, and the cowboy's hand instinctively rested on his revolver. They're close, the Apache girl murmured, her eyes scanning the darkened fields. They're testing us, trying to see if we've reinforced the ranch. Stay alert. The cowboy nodded, his nerves taut. He had fought bandits before, but never like this, not with the knowledge that every corner of the ranch had been fortified under the guidance of someone whose skill and courage far surpassed his own. He felt both grateful and anxious, knowing that this night would either prove their plans or shatter them. Hours passed in tense silence. Then, faint rustling reached their ears, the softest whisper of boots on dry grass. The bandits had arrived. They moved cautiously, unaware that every likely path was rigged with subtle alarms, tripwires that jingled tiny bells, sharpened stakes hidden behind fences, and lookouts positioned in the shadows. Stay low, the Apache girl instructed, her voice barely audible. Let them come close. We strike together, fast and precise. The cowboy's heart pounded in his chest. He had always relied on brute force, shooting first and asking questions later. But tonight, he was learning a new kind of strategy, one born of patience, observation, and respect for the land. He crouched beside her, feeling a surge of admiration and trust he had never experienced before. A group of 3 bandits approached the corral, laughing under their breath. They had no idea what awaited them. One stepped on a hidden wire, and a tiny bell jingled sharply. The Apache girl sprang into action. With the swiftness of a shadow, she knocked the first man off balance, sending him sprawling into the dirt. The second man barely had time to raise his weapon before a hidden stake tripped him, pinning his arm. The third bandit attempted to flee, only to be intercepted by the cowboy, who had learned to anticipate her movements, striking in perfect sync. Chaos erupted in the darkness. The remaining bandits tried to regroup, but the ranch itself seemed to fight back. Horses stampeded strategically, creating obstacles, while the barn doors creaked ominously as hidden barricades fell into place. The cowboy marveled at her ingenuity. Every move she made was calculated, every action designed to protect the land and its people. Amid the fray, the cowboy shouted, "This is our ranch. You don't get to take it." His voice carried authority he hadn't realized he possessed. Together, he and the Apache girl became a force neither bandits nor fear could withstand. Within minutes, the bandits were either trapped or fleeing, their confidence shattered. The cowboy and Apache girl stood among the still smoldering embers of their victory, breathing heavily, their bodies aching but their spirits triumphant. The cowboy finally lowered his weapon, turning to face her. "I don't think I can ever thank you enough," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You saved my ranch, my life. I owe you more than gold, more than I could ever repay." She gave him a faint smile, brushing dirt from her clothes. "You don't owe me," she said, "but you do owe your self-trust in others. Learn from them, and keep your land safe. That is reward enough." He nodded slowly, understanding that her wisdom was as valuable as her courage. For the first time in his life, he realized that survival wasn't about being alone. It was about alliances, trust, and recognizing the strength in those who stand beside you. As dawn approached, the ranch was quiet once more. The bandits had vanished into the night, leaving only the echoes of their failed attack. The cowboy and the Apache girl surveyed the land, exhausted but proud. Together, they had defended not just property, but pride, honor, and the future of the ranch. The cowboy looked at her, admiration and gratitude shining in his eyes. "I swear, I'll never forget this night. You've changed everything for me." She nodded silently, her gaze fixed on the rising sun. The night's battle had ended, but both knew that the challenges ahead would only grow. Still, for the first time, the cowboy felt a confidence he had never known, a certainty that with her by his side, the ranch could withstand anything. And as the first rays of sunlight touched the fields, he silently vowed that the debt he owed her would not be measured in gold, but in loyalty, respect, and the promise of protecting the land she had saved. The morning after the bandit attack was quiet, almost serene, as if the land itself was exhaling in relief. The cowboy walked slowly through the ranch, inspecting fences, gates, and the fields, still alert for any sign of another attempt on his property. He had spent years managing this land, but in the past 24 hours, he had learned that survival depended on more than just hard work. It depended on vigilance, strategy, and allies he had never had before. The Apache girl rode beside him, her eyes scanning every corner of the ranch. Though she had helped him fend off the bandits, she wasn't complacent. Every detail mattered: weak fence posts, loose boards, narrow paths that could be exploited by enemies. She moved with an awareness born of years of living in danger, a skill set honed by both necessity and instinct. "We can't rely solely on tonight's traps," she said quietly, her voice steady. "They'll come back, and they'll be smarter. We need to fortify the ranch permanently, make it a place they can't touch." The cowboy nodded, absorbing her advice. "Permanent defenses, huh? Guess that means more work for both of us." She shot him a faint smile. "Better work together than be caught off guard again. And it's not just about the fences or the gates. We need to think like they do, predict their moves, anticipate weaknesses." Together, they began the painstaking process of reinforcing the ranch. The Apache girl showed him how to use natural barriers, digging shallow trenches along vulnerable paths and planting thorny bushes where bandits might try to sneak through. They worked on reinforcing the barn doors with hidden crossbeams and lining the corral with stakes and nets that could slow down any intruders. Every adjustment was strategic, turning the ranch into a fortress without making it feel like a prison for the animals or themselves. As they worked, the cowboy realized he was learning far more than ranch defense. He was learning patience, foresight, and the value of collaboration, skills he had never truly needed before. And in the process, he found himself relying on her, not just for guidance, but for partnership. During a brief pause for water, he watched her quietly inspect the land, her dark hair pulled back, her expression calm but intensely focused. "You've done this before," he said, breaking the silence. She glanced at him, her eyes glinting. "Enough times to know what works, and enough times to know what can go wrong." The cowboy chuckled softly, a mixture of admiration and respect in his voice. "I reckon I've been blind all these years. Thought I knew every inch of this land, but you see it in ways I never could." Her gaze softened, and for a moment, the weight of the previous night's battle seemed to fade. "It's not just the land, it's about people too. Trust the right ones, and even the most dangerous situations become manageable. Trust the wrong ones, and everything falls apart." He felt a pang in his chest. Trust had always been difficult for him. He had relied on himself for so long that the idea of depending on anyone else seemed almost foreign. But now, standing beside her, he felt the truth in her words. She had risked her life for him without expecting anything in return. And in doing so, she had earned his trust completely. As the sun climbed higher, they paused again, surveying their work. The ranch looked stronger, safer, yet there was still work to do. But more importantly, there was a bond between them that went beyond strategy and fences. They had become a team, united not just by circumstance, but by respect, loyalty, and shared determination. By the cowboy side, looking at her with gratitude. "I don't know how I can ever repay you for what you've done. You saved my ranch, my life. I owe you more than gold." She shook her head gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You repay me by keeping this place safe, by protecting it as fiercely as I would. That's all the repayment I need." He smiled, understanding finally that some debts weren't measured in money, they were measured in actions, loyalty, and the promise to stand by one another. By the time evening arrived, they had reinforced nearly every vulnerable point on the ranch. The air was filled with the scent of fresh wood, earth, and the faint tang of smoke from the small fires they used to clear debris. Both were exhausted, yet there was a quiet satisfaction in their work, a sense that, together, they had created something lasting and unbreakable. As they watched the sun sink behind the hills, the cowboy realized that life on the ranch was no longer a solitary struggle. With her by his side, he felt capable of facing whatever dangers lay ahead. And deep down, he knew that this partnership, born in necessity and tempered by courage, was only the beginning of a story that would shape both their lives forever. The ranch was quiet at first light, but the cowboy couldn't shake the feeling that danger was still looming. The night's battle had ended in victory, but he knew all too well that bandits, once humiliated, often returned with greater numbers and sharper cunning. His hand lingered on the reins of his horse as he scanned the horizon, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. The Apache girl stood nearby, her posture relaxed yet alert, eyes constantly moving, taking in every detail of the land. "They'll be back," she said, her voice calm but firm. "And this time, they'll try to catch us off guard. We need to be ready for anything." The cowboy nodded, feeling a mixture of respect and unease. He had learned much from her already, her strategies, her ability to predict enemy movements, her unwavering focus, but he also realized that the coming attack would be their true test. The fortifications they had built were strong, yet the bandits were desperate and clever. As they inspected the fences and traps once more, the distant sound of hooves reached them. This time, it was not a single rider, but a small group, silhouetted against the rising sun. The cowboy's heart sank. He could see the determination in their movements, the calculated aggression of men who had nothing left to lose. "They're scouting again," the Apache girl said quietly. "But I've noticed something. They're splitting into two groups. One will try to lure us out, the other will come for the ranch." The cowboy gritted his teeth. "Then we make them pay for every step they take." With swift efficiency, she directed him to position the horses behind hidden barriers, creating false trails to mislead the bandits. She set up alarm systems with bells and ropes, and they crouched behind the reinforced barn, waiting. The air was tense, filled with the scent of dust, leather, and the faint tang of sweat. Hours passed in near silence, broken only by the soft rustle of wind through the grass. Then the first group appeared, taking the bait exactly as the Apache girl had predicted. The cowboy's pulse quickened as he watched them stumble into the traps she had prepared. Bells jingled, stakes caught boots, and the false paths led them directly into waiting positions. The Apache girl moved like a shadow, striking swiftly, disarming one man and pinning another with precise, controlled movements. The cowboy followed her lead, coordinating their attacks seamlessly. Every step, every decision, was a dance of strategy and skill. He realized, in awe, that he was no longer acting alone. They were a team, perfectly synchronized in their defense of the ranch. But then came the second group, attempting to flank them from the west. The cowboy's eyes widened. "They're smarter than I thought," he shouted. "Good," she replied, her voice steady. "Now we use the terrain. Move to the ridgelets, make them regret underestimating us." Together, they navigated the hills, leading the bandits into a narrow canyon where their numbers worked against them. The cowboy found himself exhilarated, his previous fear replaced by a surge of adrenaline and clarity. Every move the Apache girl made was calculated, drawing on her knowledge of the land and the bandits' tendencies. He followed without hesitation, learning to anticipate, to trust, to act in perfect harmony. By the time the sun reached its zenith, the bandits were either captured, fleeing, or thoroughly demoralized. The cowboy and Apache girl stood atop the ridge, surveying the aftermath of their efforts. Dust hung in the air, mingling with the scent of sweat and dry earth. They were bruised, scratched, and tired but victorious. The cowboy turned to her, awe written across his face. "I can't believe how well we did. I've never fought like that before, never planned like that. You've taught me more in a few days than I've learned in years." She smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And you've proven yourself too. Courage, quick thinking, you've got it in you. Together, we're stronger than they are." For the first time, the cowboy understood what she meant when she spoke of trust, of partnership, of relying on another person. The ranch was safe for now, but, more importantly, he had gained something far more valuable than gold or victory: an ally, a friend, and someone whose presence had transformed his life. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the fields, he realized the truth in his own words from that first night. He owed her more than gold, and perhaps, in the days to come, he would find a way to repay her, not with money, but with loyalty, respect, and the promise to protect what she had helped save. The next morning, the ranch was quiet, almost deceptively so. The cowboy rode along the outer fences, inspecting the traps and fortifications they had built over the past days. The Apache girl followed closely, her horse moving silently beside him. Though the bandits had been driven off, the tension in the air reminded them that this victory was only temporary. "They'll be back," she said, her dark eyes scanning the horizon. "And next time, they won't come alone. There's someone else behind these attacks, someone who wants more than just money." The cowboy frowned. "Who could that be? And what do they want with my ranch?" She shook her head. "I don't know yet, but I've learned that in situations like this, there's always a bigger player, someone who profits from fear. We need to be ready for anything." The cowboy's jaw tightened. He had fought men who wanted to steal his land, men who didn't care who got hurt, but he had never faced a threat that felt invisible, lurking in the shadows. The Apache girl's intuition, however, was sharp, and he had learned to trust it. By midday, they had reinforced the main gate, hidden traps along likely paths of approach, and set up a watch system that would give them early warning of intruders. The Apache girl taught him how to read subtle signs in the terrain: broken twigs, disturbed dirt, patterns in the grass that could indicate movement. Every lesson made the cowboy more confident, more capable, but also more aware of the stakes. As they paused for a moment near the barn, the Apache girl pulled out a small, hand-drawn map. "I've been tracking the bandits' movements," she said. "See here, they've been coordinating with someone further west. Whoever it is knows the land, knows the ranch, and is testing us, trying to find weak points. This isn't just random attacks. It's a plan." The cowboy studied the map, his eyes narrowing. "Then, we need to figure out who's behind this before they strike again. If it's someone powerful, we'll need more than just fences and traps. We'll need strategy, and maybe allies." The Apache girl nodded. "Exactly. And we don't have much time. If they sense that we're aware, they'll act fast, and it could be devastating." As they spoke, a rider appeared in the distance, kicking up dust as he approached the ranch. The cowboy squinted. It wasn't a bandit, it was a scout, likely sent by the unknown mastermind she had mentioned. The rider slowed as he neared, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Who's that?" the cowboy whispered. "Let's find out," the Apache girl replied, her tone calm but guarded. The scout dismounted carefully, keeping his eyes on them. "I bring a warning," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "There's a landowner to the west named Garrett. He wants your ranch. He's been hiring men to test your defenses, and now he plans a full strike. He doesn't care who gets hurt, he just wants your land." The cowboy felt a chill run down his spine. A landowner, not just bandits. This was bigger than he had imagined. "And what do you suggest we do?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Gather allies," the scout said urgently. "You can't face him alone. He has numbers, resources, and men who will follow orders without question. You need help." The Apache girl exchanged a glance with the cowboy. "We have each other," she said quietly, "but we'll need more, and we'll need to be smarter than they expect. Garrett won't see this coming." The cowboy clenched his fists, determination hardening in his chest. He had faced bandits before, but this was different. This was personal, and it threatened everything he had worked for. But now, with the Apache girl at his side, he felt ready. Together, they would protect the ranch not just with fences and traps, but with cunning, strategy, and courage. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the ranch, the cowboy realized that the challenges ahead would test them more than any battle had yet. But for the first time, he wasn't facing them alone. And in that partnership, he found a strength. He had never known a strength that could turn the tide against even the most dangerous threats. He turned to the Apache girl, gratitude and resolve in his eyes. "No matter what comes, we'll face it together. You saved my ranch once. Now we'll make sure it stays safe, no matter the cost." She nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Then let's prepare. Garrett won't know what hit him." And with that, they began planning, their minds sharp, their spirits resolute, ready to defend the land they both had come to cherish. The ranch lay quiet beneath the early morning sun, the air crisp and full of tension. Every creak of the barn, every rustle of grass, seemed amplified in the stillness. The cowboy and the Apache girl moved like shadows, checking traps, fortifying weak points, and reviewing their plans for the day. Garrett's forces were coming, and the knowledge weighed heavily on them both. "We can't underestimate them," the Apache girl said, her voice calm but firm. "Garrett doesn't just hire men, he hires the best. They'll strike fast and coordinated. If we falter even once, the ranch could fall." The cowboy nodded, tightening his belt and gripping the reins of his horse. "Then we make sure they never see it coming. Every move, every step, we control it." They positioned the horses and livestock strategically, placing lookouts along the ridge and behind tall fences. Hidden alarm bells, tripwires, and even sharpened stakes were spread throughout likely points of approach. The Apache girl walked him through every step, ensuring he knew what to do if the bandits tried to outflank them. She moved with the ease of someone who had faced far greater dangers than this, and the cowboy felt a surge of respect and admiration. Hours passed in tense anticipation, and then, in the distance, dust clouds appeared on the horizon. Garrett's men, moving quickly, attempting to appear numerous and intimidating. The cowboy's heart pounded, but he remembered her teachings. Stay calm, observe, and act with precision. "They're dividing into two groups," she whispered. "One to draw us out, one for the ranch. Stick with me. We'll make them pay for every step." The first group reached the outer fields and immediately ran into the hidden alarms. Bells jingled sharply, stakes caught boots, and false paths led them directly into prepared positions. The Apache girl moved like a shadow, striking with precision, disarming and incapacitating the attackers before they even had a chance to coordinate. The cowboy followed her lead, coordinating with her in a rhythm that felt almost instinctual. He had fought before, but never like this, never in perfect sync with someone whose skill and strategy matched his own. Together, they created chaos for Garrett's men while protecting the ranch and livestock. But Garrett's second group was clever, attempting to flank them from the west. The cowboy's eyes widened as he saw their movements. "They're smarter than I thought," he muttered. "Good," she replied, her voice steady. "That means we're doing this right. Now, we use the terrain led them into the canyon. Every step counts. They guided the attackers through narrow paths, using the landscape to their advantage. Hidden pits, makeshift barricades, and carefully timed obstacles slowed the bandits, while the cowboy and Apache girl struck strategically. Every move was calculated, and the teamwork between them was flawless. Hours of relentless defense passed, the sun climbing high above the fields. By midday, Garrett's men were exhausted, demoralized, and many either captured or fleeing. The cowboy and Apache girl surveyed the aftermath, the ranch still intact, their determination unbroken. The cowboy finally lowered his weapon, breathing heavily. "I can't believe we did it. I've never fought like that before. You've changed everything for me." She gave him a faint smile, brushing dust from her clothes. "And you've proven yourself. Courage, quick thinking. You've got it in you. Together, we're stronger than they are." He felt a deep gratitude. It wasn't just that she had saved the ranch before she had taught him, guided him, and made him a partner in defending his land. He realized that no amount of gold could ever repay her courage or her wisdom. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the fields, the cowboy knew the truth. The battles ahead would only grow more dangerous. But with her by his side, he felt ready for anything. Loyalty, strategy, and courage were their weapons now, and he understood that their bond was stronger than any threat that could be thrown at them. He turned to her, gratitude and resolve shining in his eyes. "We'll protect this ranch, no matter what comes. You saved it once, and together we'll make sure it stays safe." She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "Then let's prepare. Garrett won't know what hit him." And so, as the evening shadows stretched across the ranch, they continued their work, reinforcing defenses, sharpening strategies, and building a partnership that would carry them through whatever dangers lay ahead. The morning air was thick with tension as the cowboy and the Apache girl stood atop the ridge overlooking the ranch. The sun had barely risen, painting the fields in soft amber, but neither of them felt the warmth. Garrett had arrived. This time, it wasn't scouts or small groups of hired men, it was the full force, an organized attack designed to overwhelm. "They've come prepared," the Apache girl said, scanning the horizon. Her eyes, sharp and unflinching, counted every rider, every horse, every glint of metal. "They've studied our defenses. We'll need more than trap still test everything we've built." The cowboy clenched his fists. "Then, we make them regret underestimating us. This ranch isn't going anywhere." They rode down to the barn, where the cattle and horses had been secured behind reinforced gates and barricades. Every trap, every warning system, every strategic advantage was in place. The Apache girl moved through the positions like a general surveying her troops, ensuring every detail was perfect. The cowboy watched her, admiration and awe growing with every step. She was fearless, focused, and cunning, the kind of ally he had never known he needed. As the first wave of Garrett's men approached, a signal bell jingled. A trap had been triggered. The bandits stumbled, slowed by hidden stakes and tripwires, giving the cowboy and Apache girl the advantage. They struck with precision, incapacitating attackers before they could regroup. But this was only the beginning. Garrett had planned for every eventuality, and his main force pressed forward relentlessly. The cowboy felt the rush of adrenaline as he fought alongside her. Each move was synchronized. He would block an attacker. She would strike from the shadows, and together they funneled Garrett's men into traps and narrow passages. The sounds of gunfire, shouts, and clashing metal filled the air, but the ranch itself seemed alive, aiding their defense with every hill, fence, and hidden pit. Suddenly, Garrett himself appeared. Riding at the forefront of his forces, he was larger than most, his presence commanding, his eyes full of fury. "Cowboy, step aside. This land will be mine," he shouted, his voice carrying over the chaos. The Apache girl's gaze met the cowboy's. "We stop him," she said calmly. Together, they moved as one, drawing Garrett into a narrow canyon where their previous traps would be most effective. The cowboy blocked Garrett's path, while the Apache girl triggered a hidden barrier, causing the horses to stumble and slow the advance. Garrett's men became trapped behind obstacles, struggling to move forward. "You can't hold us," Garrett roared, swinging a whip at the cowboy. "I don't intend to." The cowboy shot back, ducking and disarming him in a swift motion. The Apache girl followed, knocking the whip aside and striking Garrett's arm with a precise move she had learned from years of training. The combined force of their teamwork overwhelmed him, and his men faltered. Seeing their leader bested. By midday, the assault was over. Garrett and his remaining men were either captured or fleeing, their plans shattered. The ranch stood intact, its fences strong, its livestock safe, and its defenders victorious. The cowboy and Apache girl stood amidst the aftermath, exhausted but triumphant, the dust and sweat clinging to their clothes. The cowboy turned to her, a mixture of relief and awe in his voice. "I don't think I could ever thank you enough. You saved the ranch. My life again. I owe you more than gold." She shook her head, a faint smile on her lips. "You repay me by standing strong, by protecting this land and everyone who depends on it. That's all the reward I need." He nodded, realizing the truth in her words. Gold, wealth, or fame could never match the value of loyalty, courage, and partnership. For the first time, he understood that some debts could only be repaid through action, trust, and shared commitment. As the sun began to dip behind the hills, casting long shadows over the ranch, the cowboy felt a deep sense of gratitude and hope. Garrett's attack had been the fiercest yet, but it had also shown him the strength he could draw from working alongside someone he trusted completely. He glanced at the Apache girl. No matter what comes next, we face it together. You've saved my ranch, and now, we make sure it never falls. She nodded, eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. Together, she said, and in that single word, the cowboy felt a bond stronger than any fence, any trap, any weapon. They were no longer alone. They were a team, and together, they were unstoppable. The ranch lay in the golden light of early morning, calm and serene, almost as if the previous battles had been nothing more than a bad dream. But the cowboy knew better. He had fought for this land with every ounce of strength he possessed, and he had seen the Apache girl fight beside him with unmatched skill and courage. The memory of Garrett's assault was still fresh, a reminder that threats could come from anywhere. Victory today doesn't mean safety tomorrow, the Apache girl said, scanning the horizon. Her voice was steady, her eyes alert. If Garrett recovers, he'll come back. Someone else will try. The ranch needs long-term security, not just temporary defenses. The cowboy nodded, understanding the weight of her words. They had survived attacks, outsmarted bandits, and defended the ranch from a powerful adversary. But survival required more than bravery. It required foresight, strategy, and allies. Then we plan, he said firmly. We make this place untouchable. Together, they walked the perimeter, inspecting fences, gates, and hidden traps. The Apache girl suggested adding more natural barriers, dense brush along vulnerable paths, small ditches to funnel unwanted intruders, and lookout points that gave a clear view of approaching threats. The cowboy absorbed every detail, learning to see the ranch not just as property, but as a living defense system. We'll need to train others too, she said. One or two people can't defend this alone forever. If Garrett or anyone else comes back, we'll need more hands, more eyes, and more minds thinking like we do. The cowboy considered her words. He had trusted only himself for so long that the idea of bringing others into the fold felt strange, but necessary. Then we'll find those we can trust, he said. People who care about this land as much as we do. They spent the day reinforcing key areas, marking escape routes, and setting up signals for early warnings. The Apache girl taught him ways to move silently across the ranch, how to read the land for signs of intrusion, and the subtle art of patience and defense. He realized that these lessons went far beyond protecting the ranch. They were lessons in leadership, trust, and strategy. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the fields, the cowboy and the Apache girl stood atop the ridge, surveying their work. The ranch looked stronger than ever, a fortress born of sweat, skill, and strategy. But more importantly, it symbolized something greater, a partnership built on mutual respect, courage, and shared purpose. You've changed how I see this land, the cowboy admitted, his voice quiet but sincere. I thought I could do it all alone, but now, I see how much stronger we are together. I owe you more than gold, more than words can ever express. The Apache girl looked at him, a faint smile touching her lips. Then don't just say it. Protect it, keep it safe. That's all the repayment I need. He nodded, understanding the truth in her words. Actions, not words, were the measure of loyalty and gratitude, and he would spend every day ensuring that the ranch, and the trust between them, remained unbroken. That evening, as the first stars appeared in the sky, a sense of peace settled over the ranch. The battles they had fought had strengthened more than just fences. They had strengthened them. The cowboy and the Apache girl, once strangers, were now partners, allies, and perhaps even something more. Bound together by shared trials and unwavering courage. We're ready for whatever comes next, the Apache girl said, her voice calm, yet carrying an edge of determination. Yes, the cowboy agreed, and we'll face it together. No one takes this ranch while we stand here. As they rode along the ridges, checking the final reinforcements, the cowboy felt a deep sense of gratitude and purpose. The Apache girl had saved the ranch, yes, but she had also taught him trust, strategy, and the power of partnership. They had faced danger, outsmarted their enemies, and built something lasting. And as long as they stood side by side, he knew they could face whatever trials the future might hold. The ranch was more than land, it was home, a legacy, and a symbol of resilience. And with her by his side, the cowboy knew that its walls, its fences, and its spirit were unbreakable.